What's up, young adults, cohorts, filmmakers? We're back. Okay, we talked about affinity and contrast, and I hope you got that down. It's pretty simple. Now we need to know the basic visual components. And this is line, shape, tone, space, color, movement, and rhythm. Okay? Now, these visual components are found in everything we see. It's in prints, it's on internet, online, in magazines, on television. It's everywhere. You cannot escape it. Even still photographs or a painting in the museum would have these basic subcomponents in them. So let's go a little deeper. These visual components, how they are used will convey the mood and the tone of a film, the ambiance. So learning them is only to your advantage as a director because you have to learn how to use them to your advantage to tell your story visually. Okay? The visual components allow you to set up a visual structure to tell your story. Okay? The first one, space. There are three kinds of spaces. First is the physical space between the camera right here in person, right, in the physical world. This one's about maybe 1.5 feet away from me, right? There's that notion of space. There's the space on the screen itself. That's another notion of space, okay? And the third notion is the space and the size of the screen, okay? So I'm looking at a cell phone, which is different than looking at like a 60-inch widescreen high definition television. So those are the three notions of space that we have. The next component is line and shape. Now here's the interesting thing about line. Line is what's called a perceptual fact. It's perceived in the mind of the beholder. Okay? Line and shape go hand in hand. Without a line, you cannot have a shape. For example, there's this speaker right here, right? And it looks rectangular. On your screen, where the texture of the wood meets the paint on the wall, there's perceived a line. And because we perceive that line, we can perceive, right? We can understand the shape. A rectangle, a circle. We have a line right around here that we perceive. Is it a physical line in the sense like I've drawn a line on a piece of paper? No, it's just a perceptual fact that we see, okay? Line and shape. The next one is tone. And tone has to do with the brightness of an object on the screen. Okay, it's plain and simple. The brightness of an object on a screen. My shirt is dark. My computer screen right here is bright. Two different tones. Okay. The next one I want to talk about is plain and simple, color. Now, there's a ton of research and ideas and theories about how color affects the psychology. And all this is pretty nice and whatever. But we need to understand color so that we know how to use it. Okay? The next component is movement. And there's two kinds of movements. There's object movement, right? Like myself. In film terms, I would be considered an object on the screen in the same way as this speaker would be an object. And those objects can move, right? I'm moving right now. Or the camera itself can move. And those different types of movements create different elements on the screen that we need to know so we know how to use them, okay? The last one is rhythm. And rhythm can be found in stationary images as well as moving images and in the editing, okay? So it's critical to understand these basic components so we know how to use them in production. Certain visual components already have emotional characteristics associated with them. although most of these visual stereotypes are easily broken. For example, red means danger, right? Danger, Will Robinson. Red means danger, but we can break these stereotypes and use them to our advantage. So we have to define the visual components to understand visual structure, okay? Now, just like a screenplay has structure, the director has to bring visual structure to the story so that it can visually be told. Does that make sense? The director has to bring a visual structure to the story so that it can be told. Yes, it's possible. Here's some other terms we need to know. The screen, which is the actual screen that the image is shown on, the two-dimensional screen, okay? Real world versus screen world. So the real world is where I am right now. I'm at home in this back bedroom filming. In the screen world, it's something different, okay? Then we have what's called foreground, midground, and background. Foreground are the objects closest to the camera. Midground are the objects in the midway point. Background are the objects in the far, far, far back. Okay, so we have foreground, midground, and background. Next, we have the picture plane. The picture plane is simply this: the outline of the screen is the picture plane. Okay? A frame surrounds almost everything. When you go to the museum, there's a frame around the picture. When you're looking at an ad on the street or a billboard, there's a frame around that, a picture plane. When you're looking at a photograph or on your phone, that's a picture plane right there. Okay? So, now that we have those, we need to understand this next sort of mental leap that you need to get, and it's important. We need to understand what's called a visual progression. Okay, a visual progression. A visual progression is when an image starts as one thing, and over a series of images, right, it turns into something else. So remember earlier I talked about how the brain links ideas or links what it sees, right? So on the visual progression, we're looking naturally at a relationship between one image to the next, to the next, to the next, and seeing that they're somehow linked together to form a system, so to speak. So a visual progression might start like this. It can start off as one dot, right? And then that one single dot becomes a line, and then that one single line can become a square, right? And then that square can become extrapolated to become a 3D object, like a box, okay? That would be considered a visual progression if those took place in four different series of images. A visual progression. It starts off as one thing and simply changes and progresses into something else. And remember, our mind automatically is looking for the relationship between those images and linking them to formally pull out a structure that the director has intended. Okay? All right, chew on that for a while, and then I'll see you on the next video.